Hello and welcome to Meet Our Makers, an artist interview podcast produced in association with Beats Per Minute. I am your host, Jeremy J. Facet. On this episode, we get to meet Fleet Foxes frontman Robin Pecknold. Robin just put out the fourth Fleet Foxes record in September called Shore. It was a bit of a surprise release, and in this chat, Robin and I discussed the motivations behind this type of release for him and how the coronavirus pandemic heavily influenced the songwriting and the general mood he was going for on this record. We talk at length about this record, but we also talk a bit about Crack Up, their last record, as well as the long gap between their acclaimed sophomore album Helplessness Blues and Crack Up. We also touch upon the distinct way he comes at songwriting and how important music and making music is to his entire life. We also take a brief moment to revel in our shared love and profound appreciation for Joanna Newsom. So please enjoy, and thank you for listening. This is me meeting Robin Pecknold. Yes, I can hear you. Awesome. Can you hear me? Yeah. I just got an email like 2 minutes ago that you joined the meeting.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh no, this is the first time my guest has gotten here before me.
You meant 4 p.m. Eastern, right?
I did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, you're in Brooklyn, right?
I'm in Manhattan, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm in Connecticut, so I knew that I thought we were on the same timeline.
Word.
So how are you doing?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Sound good. I'm good. I'm just getting back from work. I'm a teacher, so I'm like rushing to get home and be here for this. So thank you for joining me for this chat.
Totally.
So how have you? We'll talk about Shore obviously in a moment, but how have you been doing with the pandemic? How have you been coping? I know you've probably been working on this a lot, so hopefully that was helping.
Yeah, I think I came back in March. We were working at the studio in LA before this. Came back to be at the apartment I rent here for the lockdown. I was thinking that, it might pass through New York fastest, hit New York maybe the hardest, but pass through the fastest or something. That was my theory. And so it was really just 3 months of not working at all. The album was half done and it was quite an albatross, thinking about this half-finished album that had no lyrics and that, I didn't know when I'd get a chance to work again. And I didn't really think about it that much because there was so much else going on that was demanding everyone's attention, obviously. Mm-hmm. But then I ended up realizing how lucky I am compared to so many people. I guess not realizing. I always have felt lucky and grateful for having a roof over my head and having being able to make music for a living. But just the stark contrast between like finding myself in this kind of lucky position here compared to so many people the last 6 months or so. I guess that ended up informing the record in a way that I couldn't have anticipated. And then in June, July, August, I was just working every single day trying to get this thing done for this, surprise release in September, and then finished it September 8th. And then since then, I've just been distracted with releasing the record and talking to people and enjoying seeing people's reactions. And so, I'm like, I feel a little guilty to say that I've had a pretty okay time in this whole circumstance, all things considered.
Well, you were keeping busy, which is something that I think a lot of people were having trouble doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Shore would not have been what it was without this pandemic then, because as you're saying, the sort of emotional current of the time was sort of informing your writing at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how it would have ended up because I was like pretty disappointed in all the lyrics I was writing. back in February, and I was just trying to like rewrite them, and then Homer. I hadn't met Homer Steinweiss yet, and he ended up playing drums on 4 or 5 songs, and I didn't have the song Featherweight. I didn't have the song Sunblind. I didn't have, My Stranza. There was a lot of stuff that was just kind of big gaps, and I don't know how it would have turned out. I was trying to get it. I was thinking I would power through to try and get it done by May so that it could come out for September, and we would go on tour. But I'm not sure that would have even happened. So it was really weird to have a 3-month forced break in work, but then this explosion of creative work in the 3 months after that wasn't that probably wouldn't have happened if not for the pandemic.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does sound like you said, like you were kind of in a surprisingly fortunate position, despite everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, thanking my lucky stars every day for that.
Right. So why did you want to release Shore now? Because you said you were trying to finish by May to release in September. Was the plan always to release in September, even before the pandemic started?
Well, I guess the plan would have been get it done by May or something, and then some of the summarier songs on the album, have those coming out as singles throughout the summer, and then have the whole thing fall in September because there's fall type music on there too, and I think that was the original plan. When I was thinking about alternative options, obviously in this new world, people were still holding their records. People were holding their albums and then delaying them, or people were talking about pushing stuff to next year. I wanted to finish it just so that it was like off my mental plate, but I didn't want to sit on it then for 8 months or something, because I don't even think touring is going to happen in 2021. I think that seems a little optimistic that it would get back up to speed that quickly.
Yeah.
In the way we've had it in the past.
Yeah.
So, and then to me, it was just like, I think these plans were also coming together when there was, I wish there were still as much attention on systemic injustice and class consciousness as there was kind of in June and July. But in that context, I was just feeling like I didn't want to have some prolonged press campaign that was like, hey, also, and now here, look at this white dude with, you know what I mean? It just felt like that just didn't feel like coherent to me. And it felt generous to just be like, oh, let's just put it out all at once. And, the whole album can be taken in context at once. And tying it to the equinox was just a way to kind of like tie it to something that was, non-social or non-societal or non-human or something, just kind of like, we're so affected by all these things that are happening, but then, we're also so affected by the seasons and by, where the geography of where we live. And, we're affected as much by that as we are by the state of our society at a given time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was like, well, let's just tie it in with that and have the music kind of have a more kind of cosmic frame than a like social frame or something.
Yeah. So then the sort of seemingly anyway impulsive release, obviously it was in the works for a while, but kind of does remove that whole, like you said, prolonged press, like kind of almost like you didn't want to hog the spotlight away from the actual things going on.
Yeah. And I feel like now we can, it seems like it's been pretty well received, and if we put out a video in a couple weeks, or if we put out another song, or we do like a little show, we can still do those things, and people will maybe pay attention if they want to, based on if they like the record or not, and not based on if they'll like the record or not, So that just feels a little more coherent, also, or kind of, a little more, I don't know, that more my speed, mentally or something.
Yeah, well, there's sort of like almost like a generosity in the strategy that leaves a lot more up to the listeners, as opposed to saying like, I know all this other shit's going on, but you're going to pay attention to us for 6 months until this album comes out.
Yeah, that wouldn't feel good to me right now.
Right. And I've seen I think you told me, and then also I think I've seen that you have another set of songs coming out next year.
Well, that's the plan. I mean,
That's the plan. Okay.
that was part of why that was, I mean, I didn't move forward with the kind of September 22nd thing until I had everyone's blessing on that other aspect of the idea. And, I talked to every guy and everyone in the band and was like, hey, we can't tour for a while, so what if we actually tried to write songs together for the first time? And then, we're actually co-writers on something, and we, explore that while we're kind of waiting for touring to get back up to speed. And once I had that, once everyone was on board with that aspect of this, then it made it much, also made it easier to be like, hey, here's an album, because it's not like, there's this other thing in the works too, that we have an idea of what to do with our time now until there's touring. And so if in fall 2021 there's like a 24 song version of Shore that comes out and we're able to go on tour to support it, that's cool. Or if touring doesn't happen next year and it's just an extra 9 songs that get added to Spotify or something, that's also cool too.
So is that what it would be? It would be like an expansion on Shore?
My idea is that it would actually go inside of the track listing, and that
Okay.
Waiting in Waist High Water and Shore would remain the first and last songs, kind of. But it would all, well, actually, the sequencing idea I had was that it would be a song for every hour of the day, and that you would start, there would be no first or last song really, but, Waiting in Waist High Water would be like the 6 a.m. song. And then there would be something else for 7 a.m. before you got to Sunblind at 10 a.m. That kind of thing, where there's the order would be rearranged and the transitions between songs would be different. And then there would be 9 more songs to make that whole cycle.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. And you said that'll be like the first time that the band has ever actually co-written as a band?
Yeah.
So you are sort of the one writer in the studio and then the band takes it on the road. Is that what usually happens?
That has been how it's been on every album since 2008.
Okay. So there was a relatively short time between Crack Up and Shore, at least relatively for you guys, because there was a larger break between Helplessness Blues and Crack Up. And as a listener, I've noticed that Shore does, I don't know if you disagree with me, but as a listener, it comes off as sort of less structurally complex. Like there's less moving parts and it's sort of just, here are 15 songs. It's a little more straightforward, whereas Crack Up seemed a bit more experimental. Mm-hmm. Was there some sort of like desire for more simplicity, or just like a clearer sort of distillation of what you wanted to do? Like, why did you sort of, to me, it seems like you guys sort of like pared down just a bit.
I think, I wanted to kind of like take whatever lessons were learned from Crack Up and kind of from both the other records too, a little bit, and kind of do something that felt a little more like Velvet Underground Loaded or something, where it's just a bunch of solid short songs. That felt like the challenge that was exciting to me after doing the opposite of that with Crack Up. And I wanted it to be complementary to Crack Up. Like, I didn't want it to be like, totally like, I didn't want it to feel like it was a referendum on that album at all, because I really love that album and I'm really proud to have made it. But I wanted to find, it just didn't, doing that same thing again didn't seem like the most exciting possible challenge, mm-hmm. And I was thinking about like, more about the ways songs could be, sorry, how do I say this? Like less about making an 8-minute song out of 4 2-minute segments, and more like making 2 to 3 minute songs that had some subliminal like connection, either tempo wise or chord progression wise. Like Long Way Past the Past into For a Week or Two into My Stranza. Like there are chord motifs in My Stranza that are just minor variations of the chord motifs on Long Way Past the Past. And that is, so I was thinking about, that's like a 3-song stretch that I'm kind of seeing as one song, in the same way that Third of May is a one song that has 3 parts, you know. But I wanted to do it in a more subtle way than on, you know, because Crack Up, a lot of the, you know, it was a lot of like shock value, I guess, sometimes in how that stuff was structured. And I think if that, again, that would feel like a little bit cheap. And so it was more about building these gradient transitions between songs or between sections of songs, and less of the kind of less of the loud, quiet, loud kind of Crack Up vibe.
Right. So what are some of the then sort of like thematic conclusions that you were reaching with Shore that you hope that people sort of maybe get out of it?
Lyrically?
Yeah, just lyrically, tone wise, even just like what was driving this album?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, you know, I wanted to make something that was like less, you know, I feel like the lyrics on Helplessness Blues, you know, that was coming out of a very kind of existentially fraught period. And there's a lot of like just bald asking of questions about what the future will be. I feel like the lyrics on Crack Up were like meaningful to me, but they were like pretty encoded because I was talking about stuff that I wasn't really comfortable talking that sometimes they were just like too encoded, and I was the stuff I had to talk about was stuff I wasn't really comfortable with being that explicit with. And so I think on this one I wanted to be very direct and not, you know, not hide behind anything. And I also wanted to kind of cede the spotlight to other singers and cede the lyrical spotlight to other people's concerns and other people's, you know, my feelings about other people, if they're my friends or family, or if they're heroes I've had, or, you know, whatever it is. And I think that, you know, that's one reason that the first song is sung by someone else, and, you know, and why the first thing I say when the vocal comes in is for Richard Swift, you know, just kind of like as clear as possible. And I think like, you know, I think that's why the lyrics were so hard, because I wanted it to be really clear, but I didn't really have the content for it before the pandemic, because I feel like a lot of the reflections that came, like I was saying, you know, just gratitude for being alive and gratitude for having a family, even if I can't see them, you know, like, you know, brothers and sisters and good parents and good friends. And I think a lot of that like gratitude seeped into the lyrics, and I was also feeling like, you know, pretty ragged, but kind of like okay with it, you know, like not needing everything to be perfect, or not needing like, I don't know, just being more acceptance and more kind of like how you'd feel after like a long run, just kind of worn out, but kind of in a good way. You know,
Yeah, like you're tired, but the endorphins are kind of kicking in.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like, you know, that something about like, I kept coming back to these like images of being divested or something, where you're like, you know, holding nothing, or, you know, there's no kind of not wearing anything, not like no clothing defining you, or, you know, just like this sturdiness in your spirit or something. And I think, you know, a lot of that was grew out of, you know, just everything I was reflecting on during the, you know, April, May, June.
Yeah, it does come off like, I think it comes off like your happiest record. I mean, I don't know if it's all truly happy when you get really deep into it, but the overall tone of it, there's definitely a sort of optimistic tone to it that I think maybe some other albums took a little bit less to.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was I think that was like, that was the, you know, I knew I wanted to make a brighter thing, and then, you know, it just took a couple of years to be like, what does that mean to me? Like, how can I access that in a way that feels true to me and it doesn't feel corny? And sometimes when you're chewing on a problem like that, you end up learning a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about, like, you know, the variation. You know, happy is like the, you know, broadest possible word for that, those variations of feeling like relief or gratitude or acceptance, or these things that can kind of fit inside that umbrella word of happy. And so it's just kind of finding those, I guess those like things that, the sharper definitions within that umbrella term that felt like, it just did some soul searching and found those access to those things, and because I wouldn't want to make like a, I wouldn't feel super, maybe, I mean, why not? Who cares? Life's short. But I don't think I would, be inclined right away to make like a, it's Friday, let's
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect necessarily like a Fleet Foxes like party album.
But hey, maybe, why not? That sounds like a fun challenge.
Well, I mean, even before when you were talking about like trying to not go so in the other direction from Crack Up that it felt like you were dismissing Crack Up, it was making me sort of think sort of like, yeah, like I would be shocked if Fleet Foxes, was coming out in 2020 with like a synth pop album,
Yeah.
And like that is maybe what it would feel like to some people, is like a rebuke almost. And I'm understanding that's not at all what you were trying to do.
Yeah, totally. And that was, and that was like a creative, constraint that at times was a little bit like, a bit like, making a Star Wars 4 or something, or I guess Star Wars was the first one, but it's like a little bit of like sequelitis where you're like, how do I keep this going and keep it fresh? It's tied to the last thing, but not have it repeat too much. How do you keep the magic while staying within this, template? And that can be a little bit of a mental, like a heavy lift mentally sometimes. And then sometimes you can find ways to make it work, and then, I think these two records, Crack Up and Shore, are a pair to me, and I do relish the opportunity to make something next that feels like the start of a different chapter, maybe.
Yeah. I was going to ask before, was it always the intention to have another vocalist on the first song?
No, the first song was going to be Sunblind.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't really like, I didn't really have that song in any kind of like interesting shape until like 5 weeks ago when I finally wrote the chorus, and like then we recorded the drums and all the other instrumentation like that day and the next day, and it just came together super fast, and I was like, this is the best song on the album, this is the best song ever done, and it was just this kind of wild thing. But there's some version of Sunblind I was always trying to make it work as the first song, and then kind of in the process of that I wrote the Waiting in Waist High Water song, and then I was like, oh, this is a nice, lights going down in the theater, everyone enter the room kind of song. It's just a little like, here we go kind of vibe. But I didn't really feel good singing it. And then around the same time, someone sent me Uwade, a clip of her singing Mykonos by Fleet Foxes on Instagram. And then, worked out that she was close enough to the studio we were at that she could come record. And
oh, wow.
So I didn't really, it was more like that song wasn't working. I thought it was a cool intro song. It wasn't really working with my voice, but it wasn't until I heard her that I was like, oh, that's actually perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does kind of sound like that now that you put it that way. It does kind of sound like everyone's kind of getting into their seats and like we're kind of settling in.
Totally.
And then Sunblind is much like more forward momentum kind of thing. It kind of sounds like the song Waiting does. It kind of sounds like the kind of thing that might be playing like just on the PA, like as people come in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's the kind of mood that I get from that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So there was only a 3-year gap between Crack Up and Shore, but there was, as I mentioned, a longer one between Crack Up and Helplessness Blues. I forget if it was like 7 or 8 years, but what were some of the things that were going on in that time? Like what were you up to at that time?
We toured for like a year and a half on Helplessness Blues, and that ended in 2012. And then 2012, I just kind of like, I had some health issues. That whole, experience of those two albums had been quite a ride. And then it, for a young guy. I think I was like 25, 26 when all that wrapped up.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, maybe that was my music career, and I can do something else now. I was like a little bit traumatized by that Helpless as Blues tour because it was just like so dark, for many reasons, and that I was just like, I just didn't want to. I just couldn't carry all that stuff anymore, and then I just had to put it down, and I kind of like, I think in 2012 I was really realizing, I'd been very monomaniacal about music as a teenager and in my early 20s, and then I just felt kind of like not much of a full person. I didn't really like know how to cook, or I didn't really have any hobbies, or I didn't like exercise, or my friendships had kind of like, I only knew basically the people in the band because we were on tour for 4 years.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, I guess I just needed some time to build myself up outside of music. And so I just 2012, and then some of 2013, I spent a lot of time like traveling and doing backpacking trips and like really being outside in a way I hadn't been in a while. And then 2013, 2014, 2015, I went back to school, and I started an undergrad as kind of an experiment. I didn't know I would end up. I thought that I really wanted to finish that and just have seen that through. And then Joanna Newsom asked me to open for her on a tour in early 2016.
Oh yeah.
And I'd been writing songs for the whole time I was in school. I was writing songs and like, exploring New York and going to museums and, living, like surfing a lot and, like living in my life. And so when she asked me to do that tour, then I stopped going to school and thought, I need to get ready for this tour. And then I'll just make another album in 2016. And then after that tour is over, and then did that. And then 2017, 2018 was just on tour. And
yeah. Cause that album ended up being Crack Up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when you went on tour with her. I think it was only West Coast. Am I right in that?
It was West Coast and Europe.
Okay, because I was going to say, I know there's a reason why I knew it was like out of the question that I'd be able to make it to that. Although sidebar, can we just talk a bit about how fucking amazing her concert was last year?
Oh my God, that was insane.
So good. Because that was like the first time that I had responded to something of yours on Instagram. And I think you told me that like you were the one person who like wooed when Go Long started. And
yeah. That's such an incredible song.
It really is. I remember the first time I heard it too, and I was just like so bowled over by it. And I remember the first time I heard Esme, which is like my favorite song of hers.
Beautiful song.
Because that was back in like the days when you could find random like live bootlegs online. And I remember she started playing it like years before Have One on Me came out.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I was like, because there was like one concert she sang it at in like 2007, and it was this new song, this untitled song, and I was like, what is this? I was like, it was just so beautiful, and so I was so excited when it came out.
Actually, I remember that too. I remember seeing a video or something of her playing a new song before, and it being that song, and I'm being totally in love with it. And then it was like not as big of a, I mean, I love that song, but when the album came out, it was that weird thing where it just didn't feel like as much of a centerpiece of the album as an album than I was expecting it to be from hearing it, for a couple of years beforehand,
Yeah.
I was expecting it kind of, because it kind of ended up similar to how it is on the super, unadorned and stripped back. And I wasn't expecting the arrangement would be, and I love that song.
Yeah, there's something about that song that I just like. If it comes on my shuffle or something, it's just so beautiful. It's just like that I don't know how she does it, those melodies.
Yeah.
I was so hoping she'd play it live then, because it's a solo song anyway, but I think I feel like it's a hard one because she only sang it like twice on that entire tour.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, it did maybe seem like it would be this big dramatic centerpiece, and then ended up sort of being this little kind of ballad towards the end. Kind of like when Divers was starting to perform live, and that did end up being the centerpiece. Mm-hmm. And that
exactly,
kind of feels like it is.
Yeah, he did that at like Pitchfork Festival or something like that.
Yeah, I think she did that one and maybe Leaving the City.
Yeah, and then those were the two
Yeah.
kind of singly.
Yeah. Oh gosh, she's so good. I did invite her to talk to me, but her people were like, yeah, she's not doing interviews right now.
Yeah.
Which I get because it's not like she has anything to plug right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I could talk about her for like hours. But back to my conversation. Okay, so that's what you're up to during that time, and I kind of love that Joanna Newsom was sort of the one to like almost kind of usher you back into making music.
Yeah, I couldn't. There's no way I could say no to that. As a, you know, I think she's the best musician alive, and that I'm like just lucky and undeserved of having any approximation, being proximal to her in any way.
So you weren't friends with her before that?
Well, I opened for her on tour for Have One on Me.
Okay.
And then that's how we got to know each other. And then I did maybe 3 tours with her on that album, and then yeah, we kept in touch over the years. And then I went, you know, of course I would do that at any time.
Right. Yeah. When I saw her on Have One on Me, I think Alila Diane was opening, so that was lovely.
Right. Sweet.
So are you someone, because you mentioned that you were writing a lot of music while you were at school, even though I don't know how much of it did or didn't end up on Crack Up, but are you someone who's like always writing, even if you don't have an album as a target?
I think naturally, yes. You know, I think that like if you know, if I'd been born, you know, the son of an oil tycoon or something, I would probably spend like a good amount of the day just making songs, because it's stuff that I think about constantly, and it's not really stuff I think about in a way that I'm like forcing myself to. They're just thoughts that happen, you know. It's probably some subconscious conditioning from growing up the son of a musician, and you know, and then also just kind of I don't know, that's what you know, music songs can feel like big problems to solve, and there's also these weird aspects of them that have a, you know, an element of chance or chaos that you kind of get addicted to, because sometimes you'll get something great and sometimes you won't, you know. So I think like, you know, if I'm in a period where, you know, but then sometimes I'll, you know, because music has been in my career, I'll be tired from the career part and I won't work on music for a while. But I really feel the kind of like I feel its absence in those periods, even if it's like not necessary or whatever, you know, just to like have a crop rotation or something.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm definitely more productive by nature than I've been able to like release, I guess, because the first album did so well that I had just had a much more specific standards as to what everything needed to be after that. And you know, I think if, like I said, like if I was just, you know, if I didn't have a music career, I'd probably
I mean, would you be someone, because I sort of identify with this, would you be one of those people who has like 80 albums on Bandcamp with like no one listening?
Well, I mean, I could be, for sure. Like I can write. It's just about like, you know, I feel like I've tried to release the stuff that felt worth releasing, and that felt like, you know, there was an answer to the question like why, you know. But I could for sure write more music. You know, I know how to put a song together, but you know, I couldn't write 80 incredible albums or something. You know, I've had trouble making just, you know, whatever I've made. So
do you write like a whole bunch of songs before you end up writing ones that you think are sort of, as you say, worthy of being on an album?
It's sort of, you know, there are just phases, you know. There's like, I feel like there's an absorption phase, like a conceptualizing phase where you're like, okay, what kind of record do I want to make? I feel like I'm noticing that kind of comes first now, as a kind of like, what's the vibe going to be? And then kind of listen to a bunch of stuff that kind of puts you in a mindset like that vibe. And then I'll have like, you know, then I'll just be writing on and off for like a year, like trying to write songs and find melodies and find, but I'm often doing that, just little bits and pieces, and then there's a back burner subconscious process of like, how are these all going to get combined,
Mm-hmm.
and then like Sunblind, that was cannibalized from 4 different songs. All those little sections were parts of the strongest parts of 4 individual songs, and that's always how I've done it. And it's not, it just ends up feeling natural that you just have this kind of, I don't know, it's like a Rubik's cube or something, where there's all the pieces are there, but you just takes a while to slot them all into place.
Yeah. Are you a music first person, or do you write lyrics and music together?
I'm always a music first person. I feel like if I were a lyrics first person, um, I wouldn't make the music as melodic, because the melodies to me, I mean, Joanna is an amazing example of someone who can kind of like nail both in this crazy way. But I
Yeah.
feel like if if I were if I had to take 6 months and think about like what kind of lyrical, if I'm just thinking lyrics first, I think that would be a different style of writing that I've done so far, and it wouldn't be tied to melodies in the same way that this music has been. But I've always been music first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's good that we live in a time where you can do something like you did this year, where you just sort of power through recording an album. I mean, as you said, Sunblind came together 5 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and here we are 1 week out from the album.
Yeah.
Um, I forget who I was talking to. I think it was Raphael Stendhal Preston from Braids, was sort of talking about how amazing it is that we live in this time where if she has an idea, she can just like record it,
Yeah.
and then you can play with it later, or you can throw it away, but you can get it down, whereas before you wouldn't have been able to do it as swiftly as you can now.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
that's definitely a useful thing of the time we live in, and you have access to a studio, which is always nice.
Yeah, that was a godsend, getting access to those studios in July and August for sure.
Yeah, because it looks like when you look at the credits that it was recorded at quite a few studios.
Yeah, I mean, last year we started in Aaron Dessner's spot upstate. He was nice to let us use that for 2 weeks, and then that was just kind of like laying the groundwork for certain things. No like kind of final tracking or anything, except for one song with the drums. And then we went to, we were working in small groups, so we went to, it was kind of actually cost effective to go to all these places, more so than trying to lug a huge ensemble around. So we went to the studio in France that I knew had great acoustics and that great equipment, just as kind of a wish fulfillment kind of thing. We did that for 2 weeks in October, and then we kind of set up shop at this Vox place in LA from November to February. Um, in their bigger space for the most part, doing drums with Chris Bear, and then they have a smaller studio now that was a lot cheaper, so I was able to just kind of work in there by myself, working on stuff for like weeks at a time. And I kind of hit a wall in that period, like January, February, just being like, all had a ton of ideas that being executed, and Chris had done an amazing job, but I was kind of like, trying to write stuff in the studio, which is a little tough. And
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that kind of like traveling around, globe-trotting, recording world of 2019, that all just vanished. And then I ended up finishing it, finished all the lyrics just sitting in my car on the side of the road, and then found this place, Homer's spot in Long Island City, to finish it.
Hmm. So it sounds all very serendipitous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned the first Fleet Foxes record. I was going to say it always sort of amazes me that you're only like 7 years older than me, because I feel like Fleet Foxes has been so present for most of my music, searching life. So I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. I think you were 22 when the first Fleet Foxes album came out.
Yeah,
That's
made it.
it's sort of wild.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was really committed, from like 14 to doing music, so it was kind of like, I finished high school at a community college. I didn't go to college out of high school. I finished high school when I was 17. I just started playing in bands. and then writing songs. And I was in Seattle, so it was just natural. You could rent an apartment for $300 a month and live by yourself.
Yeah.
And um, it was, and I had a real like, felt pretty ambitious and pretty like set on doing this to as fully as I could. And the infrastructure in Seattle was perfect for it because it was like a little music playground where there was like, you knew exactly what the first of three on a Monday night, you knew the venue that if you did well there, you knew the next venue up, maybe 50 people would show up if you did it on a Friday night. And then, it was just like this kind of, it was a safe world for that kind of thing, and then Sub Pop was there and Barsuk was there and obviously great musical heritage. So it was like, it is kind of wild that, I was 22, but I'd been pretty dead set, for I guess 6 years leading up to that.
Yeah. And after 4 albums now, and what would that make it? 12 years, I guess, of releasing music, or actually 14 if you count the EPs. Does it still surprise you when your work resonates or does well?
This is fairly surprising to me. I mean, I feel like I didn't know what to expect, like reception-wise for this album, because it was like I felt like I was working as hard as ever on something, and feeling like kind of like there were stakes, but also like since touring went away, it was also just like, I'll just finish this album and get it out there and do it, work as hard as possible, but not like this is gonna win me a Grammy finally. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I guess like when I was younger, of course I'm like anyone over 25 isn't doing anything relevant, and when and just being a music nerd, kind of being like there's only ever 2 albums in a discography, and they've really got to do really try hard to kind of get past that. It's hard to find a lane that you can grow into and that you can keep the quality up. And obviously someone like Joanna, I feel like she's not subject to those petty realities, and she's just going to be making great music. She's just such an original that she's just going to be making great music on her timeline for as long as she, cares to grace us with it,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Fiona Apple-esque in that way.
Yeah.
Right? Just sort of like, I'm going to put something out when I want to and no sooner.
Yeah, totally. And that's a different mindset than the kind of like NME Mojo magazine mindset you're in when you're like 18, so I guess like it feels to me like this is being well received, and I'm like, but I'm also in this like kind of, I've been in my bedroom for most of this for the last week and a half. It's just so bizarre. It's all happening on my phone or on my, it's just like such a weird new thing to adjust to. So, I feel like, I guess like seeing that Pitchfork, like they posted on their Twitter this thing that was like 5, every record had a best new music.
Oh yeah.
It's like seeing that was like weirdly powerful in a way that I've like never really expected it to be. Because I don't really think about the old records that much, or I haven't been like, because that's the other thing, like I think I've stayed a little bit in this kind of younger mindset because I've been afraid of buying a house, or like kind of afraid of growing up a little bit because I didn't feel like I'd done my the creative work that I wanted to do yet, and I had some associations with settling down or growing older that I just didn't think didn't seem like they would help. I just have certain old things that I'm letting go of, but certain delusions in that way. So was the question if I'm surprised that was that kind of the question?
Are you still surprised by it when your work does as well and resonates as much as Shore seems to be doing?
I am I am pretty surprised. Like, I kind of felt like, you know, because that was the thing. I mean, that's been my main anxiety since the first album. Is like, I just felt like if you get lumped in with this kind of fad, you're screwed. And I was like, I don't. I need to find a way to make this, like creatively sustainable, and not get swept up in this, in whatever, just I don't want to be a relic of a certain era. Like if Radiohead stopped after Pablo Honey,
Yeah.
it's like they're just another grunge band, or a post grunge band, Britpop, whatever. And they obviously found their incredible way out of that quagmire, but so I've tried to do that in my own way while staying kind of true to, within the realm of my taste, and trying to write good songs and be honest and be clear. And so I think I am surprised, but it also is like, I don't know. I want people to like it, and I work really, really hard on it. And, if this, I don't know, it feels like solidifying in a cool way. Like maybe, even though we won't be able to tour for a year, I feel like since people seem to be liking this album, that feels more like more exciting to me. Like if this album came out and was like universally panned, and it was like that was the last thing that had happened before a tour a year from now,
Yeah.
it would be like kind of a scary spot to be in, because who would go to that show, but if it's instead like this thing came out that meant something to people, and then they get to like see it live in a year or something, that feels good, I guess.
Well, especially because, all of us who are listening to it and all the other new music that's coming out, we're listening to it in this isolation.
Yeah.
So if we end up a year from now being able to go to like one show, that could just make that experience so much more powerful.
I totally agree. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you said, and I tend to agree that there probably won't be like regular touring next year, but I'd be surprised if people don't start doing, like shows here and there.
Yeah, there'll be some stuff for sure.
There'll be some kind of thing.
It's just a matter of working out the logistics of that. Because, a tour like Crack Up, I had to front so much money to make that possible.
Yeah.
Just buying all of the flight cases and paying everyone for rehearsals, paying all the crew, and, just like the startup costs for like a big production are insane. So
I can't even fathom it.
It's crazy. And then you're kind of like paying, you're in this period where you're just hoping it goes well because you're paying off this pretty big debt that you've sunk into it,
Right.
And then, so that was a source of anxiety for many months, and so it'll be interesting to see, like, because, even the things I'm looking into about like things we can film, when you total up the budgets, it's like, how do we do this? Like, how can we, make this YouTube video?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a film person. I know it's very expensive.
So expensive. So it's just a matter of like, I just got to find ways to do it in ways that make financial sense, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming from a film school perspective, I can tell you that it's very, very hard to hire anyone for your projects because everyone is really expensive because it's expensive work.
Totally.
So yeah, I can't even fathom the cost at a higher level than what I was doing in college. So you mentioned also briefly that you were a little bit sort of concerned before about whether you had sort of fulfilled your creative duties to yourself almost. Do you have other artistic ambition besides music?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, I think it's like, I do. I mean, I don't know what, like, I think music, that's where those are the talents that I've cultivated, I guess, like singing and writing songs and playing instruments. And, even the stuff like, the business side of it, just like, knowing how the industry works and how touring works and all that stuff, that's like where my expertise is. I feel like if I were to retrain, even if I were to retrain for like electronic music, I can't expect the same results within a couple of years, you know, as like an Aphex Twin or something.
Right.
That's just like presumptuous and kind of disrespectful to the genre, you know. So it's like I feel like I'm at this point where like I understand what I want to do and how to do it, and not be like missing the mark or something, you know. Like I can set out, and I look at someone like my brother who's a filmmaker, you know, and just seeing his creative development over the last 15 years, and just being like, you know, seeing how good they can get something, how quickly they can do it now, you know, just the expertise they have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's inspiring, but I can't presume that I can just transfer from music to film, and it would be, you know, there's like retraining that would need to happen. And I think like, you know, I think like, I like this, you know, idea above somebody kind of in a Jiro dreams of sushi kind of way, you know, refining something to, and making something your life's work, and not being a dilettante, you know. I think there are too many dilettantes in the world these days. They're just like people who think they can do anything because a lot of it is just like exists as like an Instagram post or something.
Yeah.
But I would be into, like, if I ever had a house that had some land on it, I would be into having like a sculpture studio.
Oh.
I think it would be fun to make just as like a weekend, you know, blow off steam. I don't know, make some weird art objects or something.
Is that something you've done before?
No.
I
wouldn't take it seriously. It would just be like a fun thing to do.
Right.
But I don't know. I just want to feel like I have some expertise and I get to employ it. You know.
Yeah. So I guess now that you feel like you're maybe a little closer to, like you said, kind of knowing what you're doing and doing it, maybe you would just like to sort of luxuriate in that for a while.
Yeah, because you can apply that. You know, if someone came to me tomorrow and was like, "Can you do the soundtrack for this thing?" I'd feel way more qualified to do it than I would have 10 years ago. You know.
Sure. Yeah.
Of like writing the music, but also knowing how to execute it, and knowing what, you know, a little bit more like, yep, I can do that, and less kind of like, you know, pawing around in the dark for some perfect melody, you know.
Yeah.
So
I'd actually be surprised if you go through the rest of your career without doing some sort of film scoring. That seems like it would be something of interest to you.
I would love to do that. Absolutely.
I know. I was just talking to Mary Lattimore, and I was like, how have you not scored a film yet? And she's like, I know, I really want to. Like, it seems like that's sort of a next frontier for a lot of musicians, because it is sort of like you get to use your expertise, but in a very new way.
For sure.
Yeah. Quickly before we go, I did want to mention, because I feel like I'd be remiss without mentioning it, that you, as you mentioned, it is such a different time right now, and like all this reception of the record and the reactions are unfurling on your phone. Your Instagram game is pretty strong.
Nice. Thanks.
I don't know where it came from, because I feel like I've probably followed you on Instagram for a while, and then I feel like suddenly during this pandemic, you're just like, took off. Yeah. I don't know if you cracked open. I feel like it all started, I don't know if it really did, but it felt like it all started with your basket holding.
Yeah.
Was that just like you kind of shit posting a little bit?
No,
because I know you genuinely, I don't think you're like lying. I know that you probably genuinely were doing that, but then like it became like basically a meme.
I know.
It's kind of weird.
Super weird. Like, I feel like, because the story game, I can't, I'm not going to get into TikTok. That's like not my speed, but the story thing, when that came out, it was like, it was fun to build these sequential things, to have these little narratives going that, you know, we're building on each other if you were paying attention. And I was pretty into it in 2018 on tour. But I think it was like, I think I turned to the story thing, if I'm a little bit fried, as a kind of like release valve. And I'll just be like making funny jokes or building weird stories about like dancing bugs, or, you know, I don't know, just whatever weird thing is that, you know, because I was pretty fried by that point on that tour.
Yeah.
And then I was just fried from lockdown. And I mean, I think that the Cage Templar basket grip is like is an excellent and intuitive solution to me to like a pretty bad design that we've been living with for decades, you know?
Oh, it's horrible. Like, you've identified a problem, and I think that whoever they are who make these baskets need to listen to you.
For sure. It's an imperfect solution, but it's a solution it's pointing to, you know, the need for a solution. And I think that's why it resonated. We've just been living with this for too long. You know, and
it's polite unhumanity.
We're everything down. We need to rethink everything right now. You know,
I mean,
we're remaking the world.
Starting with the plastic baskets at the supermarket.
Totally. Starting there, that's, you know, how you do one thing is how you do everything. We've been holding the basket wrong as a society for the last decades, you know?
Yeah. I mean, how long have we even had these baskets? When's the last time they even changed, you know?
Totally.
They need to change. For
sure.
I will admit I've yet to try the Cage Templar method. Is it less exhausting on your arm?
It really depends on, like, if you're doing a cross grip, then
we're getting technical now.
You know, it depends on the basket. Some of these, you know, some baskets are gracious, and they're kind of a thicker plastic, and so you can rest them in the crook of your arm and have it not dig into your tendons, or, you know, your but then some of them, so with baskets like that, if you're doing a cross grip, your hand is on the opposite end of the basket. You're kind of holding it like a surfboard or something. There's a little bit of hip support. You know, I can carry like 50, 60 pounds of groceries that way, no problem. But wow. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. I think, like, you know, I think there's a perfect solution on the horizon, and that's going to be my next, like, you know, I'm talking to some VC guys about this, and got some angel investors on board.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds like a case for Shark Tank or something.
Oh, totally. Yeah, for sure. Mark Cuban in there.
Yeah, they'll be like, is that the Fleet Foxes guy on Shark Tank? They'll be so confused. Plus, you're very active on Instagram. I mean, you were nice enough to sort of start replying to me, but even long before I had this show, you replied to me sometimes, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So, I mean, that's nice. Not everyone is so as like engaged with their audience. So I think
I mean, it's gratifying to me. I think, like, it's, you know, and I think in lockdown, you know, it's not been a lot to do. I've been definitely spending more time on my phone than I am used to.
I know. I think everyone has, for better or worse.
Yeah, but better to be like talking to people, cracking jokes, than, like, you know, just scrolling through the news constantly.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I know that you probably have quite a few followers, and some people have a lot of followers, and it could probably be just beyond, like, mind-boggling to have to reply to people. But at the same time, yeah, that engagement is sort of so intrinsic to what we are missing right now.
For sure.
And like you say, just like aimlessly scrolling, I would imagine that actually engaging with people is way better.
For sure. Totally.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Of course, thank you.
It was such a pleasure. I'm so glad that you agreed to come on and talk to me. I'm sorry that I bombarded your DMs.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, dude.
I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and I had fun.
Yeah, me too.
Have a good rest of your evening, and yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, dude. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.